So, welcome to another episode of the Venari Podcast. As part of our HealthTech CEO series, today I'm joined by Jenny Shulkin, who is the CEO and co-founder of Override. Override are striving to raise the standard of care for people living with chronic pain. So, welcome to the podcast, Jenny. Nice to see you again.
Thanks for having me, Christian. Happy to be here.
I want to find out a bit more about your early life, particularly around were you always destined to be like a healthcare entrepreneur?
Absolutely not. This was the furthest thing from my mind growing up. But very quickly, maybe by the age of 13, I knew that I wanted to be a lawyer. I wrote my applications to law school about being a district attorney, went to Harvard Law School, pursued the path, but yet, of course, here I am running a healthcare company.
So, do tell us how that happened. What led you to founding your own health tech company?
It's not a happy story, as is the case with many healthcare entrepreneurs, but about 11 years ago, I suffered my first traumatic brain injury when I was in college. And shortly after that, about 13 months later, I accidentally suffered another traumatic brain injury. And the combination of those two concussions together ended up leaving me with a pretty severe full body chronic pain syndrome. So I've been struggling with that for the past 10 years. I've traveled to 9 different states for care. I have pages and pages of interventions, devices, medications, procedures tried and failed. I have really left no stone unturned trying to tackle my own chronic pain. And all the while I was going through school, law school, trying to build a career in law, while I had this huge other part of my life that wasn't related to my career at all. And so at a certain point, I said, I'm more of an expert in chronic pain than I am in law. And it's such a big part of my life, and went into this field professionally. So now we run Override Health. We are venture backed by some really significant venture capital players in the healthcare space. And we're trying to change the game for people with chronic pain like myself.
So tell us exactly what Override does.
You can think of us as a virtual pain rehab center. We have multi-specialty teams of board-certified pain physicians, chronic pain trained physical therapists, pain psychologists, and certified pain coaches. All of them work individually with patients, and they work together as a team. And that type of team-based approach to care is very, very rare in the United States. So one of our value propositions is this team-based approach to care, and that's common sense, and the research confirms that team-based approach to care is more effective than fragmented care. 2 heads are better than 1, as we all have heard. The other value proposition is that we are using true specialists in chronic pain. So the majority of Americans never actually reach a chronic pain specialist for their own chronic pain. Most of them are either managed through primary care providers who continually express that this population of patients is difficult and frustrating and confusing, or patients self-manage, but there are just so few pain physicians, chronic pain trained physical therapists, and especially pain specialists on the behavioral health side, that most Americans don't have access to them at all. So we're taking the burden off the patient by locating these specialists for them, cross-licensing them across multiple states to increase these providers' accessibility, and then training more specialists ourselves.
Just talk me through a little bit how you came from, like say, from law. You founded this. This is completely your first foray into healthcare.
Yep.
That must have been a nightmare.
Well, sometimes it's easier when you don't know what you're getting yourself into, right?
Fair enough. Yeah.
So I started this company with my father, who did know what we were getting ourselves into. He had a startup when I was under the age of 10. And he didn't tell me this when we were starting the company, but now he's told me that that was by far the most stressful job that he has ever had, and swore that he would never do it again. And by the way, my father has ran the largest healthcare system in the US, the Department of Veterans Affairs, but running a startup was much more stressful for him. Yeah. So I think that actually worked to my advantage, because I got to start tackling this step by step rather than having the fear of what was ahead.
kind of given the macro environment, I mean, the last couple of years, particularly in digital health, but then the wider kind of macro environment has been, pretty bad. It must have been an awful time to start something. And, how did you find that?
The truth is, when we started the company a little over 2 years ago, it was actually a great time to start something. Very quickly after we raised, it became a terrible environment. And so over the past several months, we have watched companies similar in size, similar in stage, often later stage, just closing left and right. And it feels like it's a game of survival rather than who can succeed the most. By far, when we're hiring new executives, people are coming to us because they've been furloughed by their companies. They have been part of companies that have completely gone under. So survival is success in itself. And we have been very conservative and very careful with our spend, understanding this macroeconomic environment. And then I will also say that we were very fortunate in the past 6 months to have met a Canadian venture firm called Esplanade Ventures that was about to make an investment in one of our competitors in the chronic pain space. And at the last minute, they heard about Override and they said, you know what, we'd rather invest in Override instead. And so we had a little bit of a streamlined process and were able to raise a small seed extension round to extend our runway. So yes, the macroeconomic environment is certainly difficult. It makes it more difficult to get customers who are being tighter with their own spend. But at the same time, we're grateful for our funding and know that, that money's in the bank and we will use that to the best of our ability now.
So in that case, then, where do you see Override in the next kind of couple of years? What's the plan, say, next 5 years?
Well, separate from fundraising, which of course will have to be part of the plan in the next 5 years, we hope that we'll be expanded across the US. Right now, we're in 8 states, so we hope to expand further. We've already been gaining a lot of notoriety. It's really fun when I reach out to much bigger, well-known companies, and I did this the other day to the new CEO of one of our portfolio companies with Martin Ventures, Lavara, and I said, hi, I want to introduce myself. And he said, I know who you are. I've been following you. I love what you're doing. So that's really fun. But we hope in the next 5 years that Override will be a household name in the chronic pain industry. Patients will know who we are. Providers will know who we are. And that our model of care, which is a biopsychosocial interdisciplinary approach to care using real chronic pain specialists, and by the way, we deliver it all virtually, so it's from the comfort of home, that this will be considered the gold standard in chronic pain. And that we'll not only be doing it amongst ourselves, but we'll also have an effect on how the rest of chronic pain is treated throughout the industry.
Final question really would be, any advice for future founders?
I have a lot of advice. So the first advice is probably don't do it. I'm just kidding. But I think it is important to know what you're getting into, to have a long-term plan as well as a short-term plan, and to really find a balance between those two. Any founder can get themselves into a panic attack if you start thinking about at the seed stage how you're going to raise a Series D or how you're going to go public. So that's not particularly helpful, but at the same time, you need to keep the long-term vision in mind as you're working on the short term. The next thing that I'd probably say is make sure that whatever you're founding is something that you're really, really passionate about, because you are going to be talking about it. You are going to be living and breathing it every single day. There are no days off. It's 24/7. If you're not going to sleep thinking about your company and actually interrupting your sleep with thoughts about problems that aren't solved, you're probably not doing it right as a founder. And then the last thing I'd say is that people around you are everything. Your investors, your key team players, everybody that you're going to work with will make or break the company, especially at such a small stage. Every single hire is so important. And while nobody's going to care about the company as much as the founder, that's just how it is. You can't do the whole thing alone. You can't put the whole thing on your back.
Yeah. No, great advice. And, I really appreciate you joining us, Jenny. It's been lovely to find out a bit more about Override and your story. And thanks for sharing it.
Absolutely. Thanks, Christian.